All right. So welcome everyone. My name is Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight as we create this basket of apples, very autumn-like, continuing on with a lot of our fall theme here throughout a lot of the libraries. Again, tonight you need a half sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper or smaller, like a drawing pad size paper would be about 5.5 by 8.5. And then you need your pencil with an eraser and some sort of blending tool. We don't use the blending tool a ton, but we will be using it on the apples, and you can use it throughout if you have some problems using the pencil, getting it to be lighter. So no shame in it at all. Okay. So I'm just going to grab mine up top here. All right. So we are going to get started. And basically what we're going to be doing is, as we always start, we start off with our basic shapes. So you want to make sure that your basket or bucket is in the middle here. So we're going to start off with our cylinder up top. So the way that we're viewing this is our bucket is not facing us. It's kind of on the side. So our cylinder is going to be more flat rather than round, and it's going to be sort of tilted. Okay, so we're going to start off with that. So basically, we have a cylinder for the top. Oh, let me let Sandra in. We have a cylinder for the top, and then we're going to go from there, and we'll add all of the juicy details after that. Okay. And welcome, Sandra. We are just getting started. So
no pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even think of that, Michael. That's great. All right. So our cylinder is going to be about right here. And so I'm just kind of making that shape. And here we go with our roundness. Oh, Shirley's coming on. Yes. Good evening, Sandra. It's great to see you. So we're recording, and hello, Shirley. It's great to have you on as well. And so basically, and you know what? I'm going to make this just a little bit flatter on this side, just like that. So it's going to look a little strange for right now. And then basically what we want to do is, coming from that cylinder, we're going to be going downward with our lines. And basically the line on the right is going to be a little bit longer. And you're going to continue that downward. And then you're going to make sort of a half circle at the bottom. So it's going to kind of look like a tube shape. So I'm extending mine a little bit so that it's a little bit bigger. Let me fix my camera here. I was a little bit askew. Okay, so, and then what we want to do is we are going to flatten this out just a little bit. I'm realizing I kind of made it a little bit more askew than what I wanted. So we're going to flatten out that cylinder just a little, about right here. And you're going to erase on the right side where we just created the cylinder, because we're going to then add that part of the bucket. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is you're then going to add this part of the bucket. And basically it's going to look like this. And I'm going to go in even closer so you can see. Okay, so we're going to move inward. I'm going to erase this line so that I don't confuse you. So we're going to go inward quite a bit from where the ending part of our bucket is. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up and kind of curve around. It's going to look like this. And then we're going to go downward. And I have to fix this part up here because it goes across and then across again. And then you want to extend the bottom portion of it. You make this a little more. So basically, it's kind of at an angle. Like that. And then it's also at an angle right here at the end. And then it goes down. So it's going to kind of look a little bit like that. I'm just erasing some lines as to not confuse you here. So it should look a bit like that. And then we're going to be adding a lip as we continue around here to the other side. So here is the inside of the lip of your bucket. And then you're going to erase a little bit on the left side where we drew the bucket up a little bit because we're going to make room for that lip. And that lip, first, what we need to do is make a line like this so that our lip is going to start right where that line is. And then you're going to go to the other side and you're going to make it look three-dimensional by adding a lip. And you're going to go around toward the left side and you're curving around the whole time. Now, if you need to go back and fix the lip, it's okay. Okay, but we're curving around until we get about right here. It's kind of across from the other part of the basket. And then you're going to kind of slant a little upward and you're going to kind of make this shape like this. And you can make a little bit of a line right there. And that's because this shape is the side and the back of it, or one angle of it. So we've got this side, and then we're going to go up top. And it kind of looks like, to me, like almost like a loaf of bread. Can you tell that I have Thanksgiving on my mind and food? So you're going to make it look like that. And I'm just going to show this up close. Oops. It would be much more helpful if I showed it in the camera, right? And I have to make my lines a little bit better. So I'm now going to just erase a little bit. Oh, Marcia, I like yours. I like the chocolate bar. Yeah, I like that better. A chocolate bar. A woman after my own heart, thinking of chocolate. Yes. Chocolate and bread. That's even better. I love it. Okay, so now we're going to leave this space open for now. But what I want you to do is make sure that the lip that you have here drawn is light, because we're also going to be making cuts in the wood. Okay. But now we're going to start creating down here. And I'm just going to fix my angle here just a little bit because mine kind of went a little bit strange. So now I'm just going to fix it. Okay, so we're going to now go further down. We've got another sort of lip part of the bucket. So coming down here, it's less than halfway down, and we're going to make a half circle. So in order to make it look three-dimensional, we're going to bring that half circle out like this. And I know it looks kind of strange, but trust me, it's going to look three-dimensional once we're done. Once you do that, you're going to go behind your basket for the next part. And you're going to make kind of a little curve right here. I'm going to make that darker so you can see it. And then you're going to bring that down and follow that half circle that you created. And then you're going to do the same on this side. And you're going to kind of create a shape like that. And now your bucket is more three-dimensional. I'm also looking at my bucket and realizing I have to taper down these parts. So I'm going to help you all do that because I led you astray. Now, once you have that shape, you then want to go inside and erase the line for the bucket and make it a little more pronounced for now, meaning that sort of lip for the bucket. So I just went back and just made those lines a little more pronounced. Okay, so we are moving downward now. And we're now going to taper these lines. So we originally have it looking like a cylinder. And that's a good thing, but we now want to taper a little bit. So we're going to take the left line and we're going to go down like this inside that line. And the reason we're going to do that is because we have the bottom lip on the bottom. Of course it is because it's on the bottom, right? We're also going to do the same on the other side. We're going to taper in that shape like so. And then when we do that, we're going to make another half circle to meet up with the other side. And if you notice, basically the part that's coming out towards us is sort of in the middle here. So our circle kind of almost, if we were looking at this, it would almost come to a point, but it's a rounded point. And that's going to make it appear three-dimensional. Once you do that, you're going to erase those lines on the side that we created so that now your cylinder is more tapered. I'm going to give you all some time in order to do that. And then we're going to create the bottom portion of it. And, you know, we're still going to be creating the apple and the apples and all of that. But first, we want to lay in the basic shapes here. So like we always do, for most of you that follow my workshops, we make everything very light, and then we go back and we start adding in the details. But this helps us be able to see that we're making three-dimensional shapes. Okay, so now at the bottom here, we're going to now make a bit of a lip by coming over here on the left, making that little side like this, and then we're going to go around. Now you want to thin out the lip, but as it goes around, you're going to do the same thing that we did here at the bottom. It sticks out here in the middle a little more, and then your circle starts to taper off until you get to the side here where there's a little piece of it showing. Now, if it looks kind of wonky, this is where you want to do some adjusting. So adjusting might look like, I'm looking here, and this looks a little bit wonky, so I'm going to make this circle a little more like a smile over here. So I'm basically, my line is going up a little more than I had it, so that this part is going to look not as wonky. And then I'm going to make this a little thinner. So here is where, you want to look to see and make your adjusting as much as possible. Can make this one just a little bit thicker. There we go. So you should have something that looks sort of like a bucket. And then we are going to now continue first here at the bottom. So we're first going to be making our apple here at the bottom. And basically, so you want to make sure this is light because we are going to be erasing it. We're going to draw a circle for our apple, and it is not a perfect circle. So drawing right on top of where we drew, we are creating the shape of our apple. And then once you do that, you can erase inside the apple so that now your apple is leaning up against your bucket. Like so. And then you're going to make the core of your apple a little more towards us. So you can make sort of a half circle for now, and then just making a bit of the stem coming out for now. And then you can make that a little bit darker after you feel like you have the shape the way you want. And there's our first apple. Lift up my camera here. Okay, so now we're also going to go back over here on the right side. And we are also going to add a little detail that we didn't have before. So we have sort of our bucket area here, but we have a little slice right here at the end that is sticking out. And you're going to erase and add that. So again, I just erased and added that part for the other side of the bucket. And before we start to add the handle, we're going to do a little bit of detail on the parts of the bucket to make it look wooden. So this is where we're going to start to kind of make some kind of cuts in the wood. And we're going to start up here. So basically, we're going to start at the edge over here of where it meets the lip. And basically, you're going to start with your first line like this. Now, this is texture. So basically, it's sort of a line up top that is slanted, and then it goes down. And you're going to make a bunch of these, not too many, and some of them are a little bit smaller. And so that's going to go around like so. We're even going to make some right here at the top of this one. I'm just lightening up my lines a little bit for this. So I'm going to make one over here, maybe two, like that. Here we go. Oops. I changed that shape a little bit. Didn't want to do that. There we go. Okay. Now we are going to continue doing that detail now. We're just going to be making very light lines. So now we're going to follow some of these lines down into our bucket. Just really light lines. So what we're trying to do is we're kind of creating the texture of the wood. So the texture, pretty much the way this is showing, is basically we see quite a bit of the texture at the bottom of the bucket, a little bit in the middle. We're also going to have some color change happening, even though we're using graphite. We're able to make it look like the light is shining on certain parts of the bucket by the way that we're going to be creating the tone, the shading. It is a distressed look. Exactly, Marcia. Yes. Another word for it, I love that, is distressed. Exactly. And I even make a bit of the bucket over here in the back, kind of buckle a little bit. So and the way I do that is I add a line right here, a curved line, right? And then I follow that up here and curve it again, but more towards the bucket. And see, now that makes it look like a little more less than straight. And that's kind of what we're aiming for, a distressed bucket. I love that, Marcia. That's great. And then I also like to come back over on the left side here and also kind of warp my bucket a little bit by making that line bend inward a little bit as it goes up and it meets the lip. And we're going to have one more little detail change over here that's also going to help with the lip of your bucket. So basically, I had you go round here, and we do want it round, but we want to kind of square it off a little bit right here. So as it's turning, you're going to square it off a little. See, just a little bit, and then it's going to turn again. And that's going to make all the difference in your bucket, in the angle. And then we are finally going to add the handle part. So we are going to come on the right side here of our bucket. And I'm going to make my handle here, or the top part of it, just a little bit thicker, like that. Mine was a little bit too thin for my taste, so I just made it a little bit thicker. So we're going to start a little bit lower over here to start to add the handle. And basically, we're going to make like a half circle right here. So go a little bit lower down from your the part where you're adding where you added the lip. So go down a little bit and make that half circle like that. So it's going to look like that. And then you're going to kind of start to make a little bit of a circle on the left side, but then inside that, you're going to make your first line for your handle. And it's kind of going to go outward a little bit and then down. So I'm going to make this a little bit darker. And I know it's a little confusing with the line I have there on the bucket, but you basically want it to be a little bit bending, and then it's going to turn as it gets down towards the lip of your bucket. And so you're going to turn that like so. And you can go towards your apple for now. The reason we're making this line like this is because we're then going to make a cylinder on top of this for the actual handle. Okay, so now we're going to create the handle part first. This is kind of just a guide for the handle. And so basically, we're going to make kind of two rounded shapes or slightly bowed out shapes on the side. And then we're going to make a circle like this. So it's going to look a little something like this. And when you're ready, you're going to erase all of the lines inside, and then you've got a handle. So basically, it's kind of like a circle at the end with curved lines on either side. And now, once you do that, you're going to make sure that this line goes straight through your circle. So here's my circle. This line is going to go through, and then you're going to make it three-dimensional by creating a little bit of a half circle. I'm going to go really close in. So basically now we're going to add the detail of making kind of a C shape. And then you're going to complete the other side of your long handle. And so you're going to go upward until you meet the other side up here. And so basically you're going to have to erase part of the lip in order to make the handle on top. I'm going to erase this so you can see and make it a bit darker. So this is really what you should have. It's going to look like that, or should look something very similar to that. I'm going to give you some time. And I think I'm going to make my apple just a little bit bigger. I want my apple to be just a little bigger here. There we go. And I'm just going to make a little bit of an adjustment down here and make my circle a little bigger, like so. The reason is because I want my handle to be a little bit bigger as well. So it should look something like this. And I'm gonna lift my camera up, and we're getting quite a realistic looking bucket, or it should be. We're edging towards realism. All right, I'm gonna lift up my camera one more time so you can see a little more here. And we're going to make the last part of our handle on the other side. But first, again, I like to taper in the bottom part of the bucket again. So basically, the top part of our bucket is kind of going slanted and inward. But then I like to come back and make the line at the bottom, or the line at the second half of it, a little more inward, like so. And then you should be able to see just a little bit of the lip of the bucket there. So the other thing is, if it looks a little strange, you can change your bucket at the bottom to look a little more circular by having that circle go in just a little bit. And then we now want to create the rest of the bucket handle coming from here. So you definitely want to make sure that that line matches up with your handle here. So basically what I mean is the silver part inside the actual, I kind of think of this, if it's a plastic handle or more of a metal handle, you want the thin metal part to be in a line over here on the left. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to kind of draw like a pretend line for that part of the bucket. And then we're going to curve it and go upward. So again, you're going to go outward and then you're going to go towards your bucket. So something like this. Now I went through my apple just so you could see that you want to make sure that it's in line with your bucket handle. And then once you have that, you can then make the other side of it like so. And then it disappears behind your apple. And then if you made sort of a guiding line for yourself, you can then erase that inside the apple. And so now you have so far a drawn example of bucket of apples, but now we're going to go up top and we're going to add in the rest of our apples. And then we're going to make it look realistic. So we're going to start here on the top left. And so we have this apple that's happening, and basically we're going to make more of a curve for the apple shape. So this is our apple right here. It's nestled inside. So basically, it's not going to look so round because it's kind of nestled up in between other apples. So I kind of made a shape that is some points a little bit pointy here. And then I'm going to come back up at the top and make a half circle for the opening or the top of the apple. And if you like, for now, you can also just make a curved line for the stem. The next thing you're going to do with that apple is you're going to come here on the other side and you're going to make that apple a little bit smaller by making a curve right here and then making the curve to the bucket, this little piece right here, and you can fill that in with some shading, just some medium shading for now. And then we're going to come around here to the next apple. So again, we're kind of going to go up and around. Kind of a little bit of an angle here. So that apple is kind of, sometimes it disappears behind this one, depending on how you make it. And I'm only going to make a part of that apple because now the next apple here at the bottom is also going to be shown like so. And then you're going to erase inside that apple because it's now in front of the other ones. And you can make a bit of a circle happening for the core right here at the top. So our apples obviously are at different angles. You're going to come back to this one in the back and you can make the core up at the top and then make a little bit of the stem coming out of that as well. And you can do any kind of erasing that you need to in order to make that stem look three-dimensional. And I'm going to fix this apple a little bit because it looks a little bit like a little pumpkin. So I'm going to make it a little wider back here. Like this. And then a little bit at the bottom. Now you can see that it's not very circular. And that's okay because now we make one more apple over here in the back. And we'd make that just by making a curved line. And then our core, again, that little half circle. And just a little bit of a stem coming out of that. And we're going to make two other apples. There's going to be one back here by making a bit of a half circle, but you can see that it's not really a circle. And we make a little bit of a line right here for some of that core. but we'll come back to that. And then we have our final apple back here. Now, if yours looks a little off, you can make another shape back here if you want. I'm going to extend this part of the bucket to be a little bit longer because it's looking off to me. So if you feel like yours wants to be a little bit longer too, you can join me in doing that. And so this is where you want to kind of look at everything and make sure it's looking the way you want. Just fixing some lines here. And then we're going to get started with the shading. And we're going to start first with the bucket. And so we're going to start here at the top. And basically, we're going to shade a bit darker right behind our apples in this section. So your shading should be a medium to dark tone. So I'm just taking my pencil for now and just filling in that spot. And you can already see how that makes it look more realistic. Or it should look more realistic to you by doing that. And then you're going to very lightly shade on top and on the other side, going down towards us. We're going to deal with the lip for right now. Oh, we got Elizabeth coming in. Okay.
Thank you for seeing me.
Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm just going to mute you because we're recording. So we started at about 6:30, 6:35. But this is being recorded. And we welcome you to start if you're able to. And if not, you can relax and watch us draw and then do your own at your own pace. But it's very, very nice to have you. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, oh, no worries, Elizabeth. Sounds good. Sounds good. So we're going to come over here now, and we're also going to make some shading happening up top here. So again, I'm going to kind of extend mine to make it just a little bit longer. I like my bucket area at the top to be a little bit longer. And again, if you'd like that too, I invite you to do that. And I'm going to make this part stick out a little more on mine. I want it to stick out a little more and I want it to look a little more buckled. So the way that I just did that, if you want to follow along, is I erased this and then made it a little wider, and then I go inward with my line a little bit, and then it makes it look a little more buckled, which is what I'm going for here. Because remember, over here, we kind of made this line slanting a bit. So I just wanted to, I felt like mine wasn't out enough, so I went and fixed it. Okay, so up here, we're gonna very lightly shade with our pencil. And then we're now gonna start adding some shading on this side, and then we'll go back to the lip, but we're gonna start shading from this point down here. And basically this is gonna be like a medium gray for now. So in this area, right behind where our bucket, right where our bucket handle, the long part. We're going to shade this sort of a medium to light gray, and then you're going to continue that shading over the lip for now. And then you're going to start slanting that shading kind of in a little bit of a line going towards your handle, your big handle. So it's going to look a little something like this. So that is our first order of business with our shading here. When you are finished that, you're going to come back here towards the top area, the circular area of the handle, and you're going to shade that kind of a medium to dark shading. Now I'm going to go closer so that you can see that. So it's not quite black, and I may just lighten mine up a little bit. And basically, you want a darker edge here and then surrounding it. So again, this is sort of a medium to dark gray. I'm lightening it up just a little bit. And then what you want to do is shade a little bit on the left side of that circular area. So I'm going to show this up close. So it should kind of look like that. And then there's a little bit of a shadow that's kind of bouncing off right here. And the way we do that is just taking the tip of our pencil and very lightly kind of shading a slanted line. So again, I'm going to show that. So I'm talking about this part right here. So I just took that and just kind of shaded a little bit of a slanted line there. And now we're going to continue with some darker shading underneath here. And so basically we're going to come right back underneath and we're going to shade a slanted line that is a little bit darker than the shading that we created for this one, because it is still shaded, but it's a little bit darker. And you're going to stop right where the part of your bucket is that lip. And then we're going to go into the lip for now, and we're going to shade. So there's your shading for that. Now we're going to go into this part of the bucket. We're going to shade a little bit, and we're going to go towards the left side here. And then we're going to shade darker, like almost like a shadow right outside of this lip. So you're going to make it darker till about right there. So you should be able to see the difference in the shading here. This is darker. This is lighter. And then we're going to still stick with this lip, but we're going to shade now on the edge of that lip, but on the inside of it. So I'm taking my pencil and very lightly sweeping it across in the same shape. And then I'm very lightly shading across towards the handle. And then you're going to do the same in the back right here. So basically what you have happening, I'm showing this up close, is that you've got shading on the outside of it, right? You've got a part that is the white of the paper for now. And then you can neaten up on the other side by just making sure your line is a little crisp on the outside of it. And then we're going to take our pencil, and on the bottom, you're going to make the line around just a little bit darker, not black, but just a little bit darker than your shading, like so. So basically, you're just going to accentuate that line a little bit. And then we're going to start adding more shading going down here. So we're going to go over to the left a little bit. We're going to leave some white space here, and we're going to start shading again in this area. As we move to the left, we're basically staying underneath this lip. And then we're going to continue that downward here too. Towards the shadow. And then when we get towards our handle part, we're going to go a little bit darker with shaded lines, almost like it's coming from behind here, because it kind of is. It's the way the light is happening. And then you're going to continue that shading right there. And we're going to work our way around this section of the bucket. But first, we're going to end up here towards the back because we need to make some darker shading here along the edge. So when you're finished over here, you're going to come to the edge here, and you're going to make a little bit darker shading like so. And then you're going to start lifting up your pencil for light lines, or light strokes, I should say, over there. And then you're going to come down to the bottom here, and you're going to, just like before, we made this line a little bit darker going around. I'm going to make this circle kind of stick out over my line and then continue. So you come around, make this a little bit darker, and then we're going to get into the shading. And the same thing, we leave a bit of the white of the paper and shade at the bottom of it. And you're going to go around, but as you go around to the left, you're going to fill in more of that space with your shading. And right now it's sort of a medium gray, but we're going to get darker in parts. But for now, it's going to look a little like that. And then you're going to outline the bottom of that shape. Towards your apple. And then you're going to add some dark shading right near the apple. And you're going to make it just a little bit darker towards this part of the handle. So see, I kind of made this part darker. I'm going to show it up close. So you see it's sort of like a curve of darker shading. Okay, Shirley, it's so good to see you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, Shirley. Okay, and then we're also going to come back over here. Now we're going to make this a little darker as well. So we're going to go over here, darken it up. I'm going to add a little bit thicker part to my bottom part here. And when you're done with that shading, you can outline on this side, make it look a little more complete. I'm going to flatten out my bottom here because it looks a little too round on mine. So I'm just going to flatten out the front here just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to continue here on the left side. And basically, we're going to be doing very light shaded strokes. This is going to be very light. We're now doing light texture by picking up our pencil and lightly adding in strokes that kind of make it look like wood. And we come down over here towards the back of the apple. And I'm kind of creating shading that makes it look like it's wood by kind of shading and then going up a little bit, shading, going up a little bit, almost like a, I'm thinking of, I don't know, is it called like a heart monitor? Like when you're in the hospital and you see, this has never happened to me, but like, you know, you see it in the movies and you can see the heart, like the heart line, you know, right? Yeah, Marsha's like, yeah, I know, like, right? You know what I mean? So I'm kind of thinking like that in the way that we're doing the shading. I mean, it doesn't have to look like a heart monitor, but but just trying to get you to understand kind of where I'm going with the shading. And then I even like to maybe, you know, draw a little bit of kind of like a wood texture here, maybe just a little bit like that. Like so, in order to get, you know, make it look more like wood. And then we want to darken a little bit again, right towards our handle. And then we're going to go into our handle and shade. So our handle, to make it look three-dimensional, it's going to be darker here at the bottom. So here is the bottom. And I want you to shade kind of like curving like this. So my pencil with the shading is slightly curving to the right. Like if I were to make strokes, I'm going to show you. Do you see how they're like curved strokes? So you're going to make that, and it's going to be medium dark. And then you're going to continue that curving on the other side with some light strokes, light curved strokes. And that's going to give the impression that that cylinder is going around. Now, once you do that, you're going to go back here to the bottom and you're going to add a little bit more dark, like a little bit of a scribbled line of dark, like that. And that's really going to make it look more realistic. And then we're finally going to go inside the circle part, right? And we're basically going to shade around the center of where the metal is coming out of. So basically we want to leave all around the white of the paper so that basically it looks a little bit highlighted, and it's going to make it look more realistic that way. Like so. And then we're finally going to get into the metal part, which is basically you want to basically outline the outside of the metal part on both sides. So you're now going to take your pencil and darkly outline both sides or both lines of the metal, kind of like that metal rod that is the handle. You know the old buckets I'm talking about. They're so cool. My great-grandmother had a farm, and I remember this was actually inspired from her farm. They used to collect the apples in these old buckets. Okay, and now you're going to shade kind of dark on the left side. I know it's hard because it's very thin, the metal. You're kind of going to shade toward the left side, but as it gets down towards the bottom, it's going to mainly or basically be the whole part of that metal. And then you're going to switch sides with your shading to the right side, going towards the bottom of your bucket. And then you can fill in just a little bit of shading at the bottom. All right. Now we're going to add a little bit of some darker strokes on top of this shading by coming up here and just adding a little bit of some shaded darker stroke on the left, and then a little bit on top of that. And then as we get into the middle part where we have it white, you can very lightly shade and maybe add some, a little bit of a dark spot. We're also going to come back down here and just add some slightly darker spots of shading just to make texture. Maybe down here a little bit. And then we're also going to come back down here to the right side, and we're just going to add kind of a darker line of shading that's, looking more warped. And then we're going to come down here at the bottom and shade a little bit darker towards the bottom here. And also adding a little bit darker to around the part it's kind of jutting out. And you can also maybe make the outside of your bucket a little bit darker just with the line. You're just going to emphasize that line a little bit. And then we're finally going to come around here to the left, and we're going to finish up the metal on this part of the bucket. And we basically go a bit darker inside by, again, accentuating that line, and then also accentuating the other line, but it's kind of like, I'm going to show this up close. This is what I mean. It's almost like there's two darker lines outside of a shaded line in order to make that look more realistic. And you can add just a little bit of shading on the white part at the bottom. And we're now going to come up towards the lip, and we're going to do some shading back here on the lip. You're going to shade here, and then also you're going to start shading in light strokes across the lip here, almost like little ticks on a ruler, and then a little darker on this side. And as we go up into the next part of the bucket here, we add just some little dark spots over here on our bucket. And then we start to extend that shading just a little bit in this section. And then we're going to go on top of this part of the bucket here and make a curved shading. Just a little bit. And then I like to re-accentuate this part here by making it a little bit darker. And then we're just going to grab our tortillon for a second. Right? So we're finally going to be using, or whatever blending tool you have, and we're just going to lighten up or shade a little bit into the whitish area here, and just lightly swiping down here. And then guess what? You're going to take your tissue or tortillon or whatever you're using. You're going to come down to this apple on the bottom, and you're going to add some shading in the front and a little bit on the right side, like so. And you're also going to add some where the core is. You're kind of going to lighten everything up for now, or blend everything. And then we're going to go back and add some darker values as we complete our basket or bucket. You're going to take that again if you're using your blending stump. If you're not using a blending stump, you can take your pencil a little bit and very lightly shade. Well, like so. Let me see. Can you guys see that? Like that. And then you can blend. So we're now moving up here. And basically, we're blending kind of on the front of the apples, kind of going in a circular motion. We're staying at the front of the each apple. So I'm now, let me lift up my camera here a minute. So where we kind of started to add a bit of the darker parts on the apple, you just want to blend those. Now, once you do that, you're now going to go back in with your pencil. We're going to start up here and then move down here. So we're going to start over here and basically make the outline of this apple a little darker. And to the right of it, we're going to add some shading with our pencil, like so. Basically, so that it's looking more roundish like an apple. So you can see, you can kind of follow what I'm doing here. I'm going to go a little closer. And then we go a little darker, just like a dark spot on the left side of this core to make that appear that it's three-dimensional. And then I add like a little bit of a light hook, right? Like a curve there. And then just a little bit of the stem here by kind of shading. And then I like to add on top of what we shaded some pencil lines on that apple. And then we move to the next apple. We outline that. Add a little more shading because it's back there and it would be a little darker. Now we're going to come to this one. Shade the front of the stem. And go a little bit darker right at the bottom of the stem. And then again, adding a little more line shading to that apple. And then we're going to come around to the lip. And we're going to outline or accentuate the line of the lip right now. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of making the line a bit jagged as I follow it. So I'm kind of going around and just making it a little bit jagged so that it looks like, you know, it's kind of old wood. And what I like to do is then add some more dark little kind of cuts in the wood. And at the same time, I do it on the other side a little bit, maybe adding some little pieces of dark parts like so. And now finally, with these apples, you're going to come over here to this one and add a little more pencil shading right here because of the way it's facing. And then this apple, there's a little bit of shading here on the side and also in the front. And then we have our core, our little half smile. And then this core, where we start to kind of make a little bit of a circle. And some shading on this side. And then our final, let me lift this up a little bit. We're going to come down here to this apple and make the core a little bit darker. And our stem a little more pronounced. And then a little bit of pencil shading right in the front. And a little bit on the back on the right. And then our last part of shading is our shadow, which is coming from the front underneath the apple and extending in kind of stripy lines, very light stripy lines across the right. And your paper is probably pretty dirty, smudgy. So you can just clean it up a little bit outside of the shadow. And if anything looks a little dark, you can go in with an eraser and just lighten up those parts. And a little more here. But I am so curious to see what these look like. So I'm going to remove the spotlight. And if you are ready to show yours, oh my gosh, these look incredible. Marsha and Michael and Jean. Oh my gosh, Joan. Oh, I love it.
Good job.
Wow. Let me see, Joanne. Oh my gosh.
Wait, where, Joanne?
Move
I'm
over.
selling my apples.
Oh my gosh. All right, I'm scrolling through. Oh my gosh, Adrian and Crystal. Tammy.
Trisha's is nice.
Trisha.
Go, Trisha.
Wow. Look at these. Oh my
Wow.
gosh. Wow, these are beautiful. Michael, gorgeous. These are amazing.
I think your crew is getting better here, Anita.
I agree. Great job, everybody.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
good.
I am
That
like
was
so
fun.
impressed. Beautiful. Yay! So send
That's
these
excellent.
in.
Who's
Yeah,
that?
I agree. I agree. Beautiful. So I'm going to put my email in the chat if anybody doesn't have it.
This is good, Danielle. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, these are just incredible.
Thank you very much for an enjoyable evening. Once again, you've brought a little magic into our household. So thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, Michael. Well, you guys bring magic to me. It's incredible that you keep showing up and like this is just amazing the work you guys are doing. Wow. That is
I like
so
Joanne's
wow.
too. Look at Joanne.
I know.
Thank
I'm not
you.
really
Joanne,
sure who's iPad number 2. I don't know who that is, but that's
that's
good too.
Danielle.
Danielle.
That's me.
Go
Yeah.
Danielle.
Thank
Yeah. These are incredible. That is mom and daughter, Joanne and Danielle.
Nice.
Go ladies. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Michael. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Anita.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a
Thanks,
great night.
everybody. Thanks,
Happy
Sandy.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Early.
Thanksgiving early,
Yes.
everybody.
Have some apple pie.
Yeah, I agree. Have some apple pie.
Yeah. Take our apples and make a pie.
Absolutely. That's
cider.
what I'm doing.
I'm sure they'll be delicious.
Exactly. I hope so.
That was fun. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Great job, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Turkey
everybody.
Day.
Thanks, Joanne.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Send in hearts, guys. See you soon.
See you soon.
Thanks, Sandra.